welcome everybody. Let's talk real estate. Your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current commercial real estate market here in Southern California. As we take a no BS look at both sides of the issues driving this market today to find the best solutions going forward. With our man right in the middle, it's Barry Saywitz. Hey, Barry.
Hey, good morning, Paul, and good morning to all of our viewers and our listeners out there. Welcome back. It's Tuesday, and if it's Tuesday, we are talking real estate. I am Barry Saywitz, president of the Saywitz Company and managing partner of Saywitz Properties. And I'm excited about today's show. We are going to learn a little bit about the history of Orange County. We are going to talk about some real estate. We may talk some politics. We may even talk some BS. Who knows? But I'm excited to have Jared Mathis on the show, our guest, CEO of the Moulton Company, president of the Moulton Museum, active politician, and community activist, all of the above. Jared, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, so I'm excited to talk about. I know your family has a long history in Orange County, and lots of different aspects of where the family has come from, where the investment has come from, and where you are today. So I got a lot to cover. We'll try and go quick, or we'll be here all day.
Sounds good.
But so I want to rewind. So the for those folks out there that don't know, the Moulton family and the Moulton Ranch goes way back to the beginnings of Orange County. I guess take us back to where your family came from and how they ended up here in Southern California.
Sure, absolutely. So my great-grandfather, Louis Moulton, first arrived in Orange County in 1874, and he came here from Boston on a steamer ship. He hopped at the age of 19, went and crossed overland at the Isthmus of Panama, and ended up in a stagecoach in Orange County. I think it's May 6th of 1874. And the next day, he was working on Rancho San Joaquin for Mr. Irvine. Huh. And he was a sheep herder. I mean, he was a young guy. He could have been very comfortable in Boston. His mother, Charlotte Fenno Moulton, part of the Fenno tribe in Boston. They were Beacon Street types. They were in publishing and wool and a number of different things. He could have been very comfortable doing something with the family out there, but he was an adventurer. He had that Orange County pioneer spirit, and he came out.
You'd have to be an adventurer. I mean, the adventure just to get here at that time had to be a crazy, long, wild ride.
Right. 6-week journey, not a pretty one, but... and then, he ended up marrying Nellie Gale Moulton, or Nellie Gale, became Nellie Gale Moulton in 1908. And in between 1874 and 1908, he ended up purchasing what became Moulton Ranch, about 22,000 acres, essentially San Juan Capistrano to Irvine on the eastern border.
And basically just south of the Irvine Ranch for the Irvine's the most popular or recognizable ranch, but basically just almost everything south, right?
Right. It bordered each other. Basically, if you were to look at some landmarks, Laguna Canyon, the property line, we were on one side of Laguna Canyon, Irvine was on the other, right. On the northern side. And then we cut behind Laguna Beach and hit the water at what is still the dividing line between Laguna Beach and Dana Point, which is the property line between Three Arch Bay and Monarch Bay. That was the ranch property line. And so hit the water there, but the widest point was basically the path of I-5. It was El Camino Real at the time, from Irvine down to San Juan Capistrano.
And at that time, I mean, you're talking 150 years ago, right? What was here? Nothing.
Well,
it was ranches.
Yeah, basically, and the thought is that it was a lot of livestock, right? So sheep the sheep were on the land first with Moulton Ranch through tenant farms and that sort of thing. As time went on and the government started incentivizing people to grow cattle or raise cattle, that we switched over to cattle, and with the invention of refrigerated freight cars and that sort of thing, that helped it become more of a cattle ranch. But still, by far and away, the livestock, whether it was sheep or cattle, were not the primary source of the industry. It was the farming. It was beans. It was wheat and barley. All the hills that you see that are covered with homes now and trees, none of that existed. The only trees were really in the creek beds. They were just open rolling hills.
And how did the oranges come into play?
So we weren't really involved with the oranges, but they grew here well. The climate was good for them, primarily more towards Orange and
Further
Santa
north, yeah.
Ana and further north. But we did have some orange groves in San Juan Capistrano, about 80 acres back in the day. But primarily the industry was lima beans and things like that.
And most people know Nellie Gale Ranch. It's a very high-end community. It's been around for a while, and there are ranch-style homes in there and horseback riding, etc. And that was named after your
and that wasn't our doing, but they named it after her because she had donated most of that community, about 250 acres of it anyway. Before it was ever built, it was still raw land. She donated that to Chapman College. And after they held on to it for a while and then sold it to be developed, they named it after her as kind of a tribute to the generosity. I think it's still a top 5 gift to Chapman.
Yeah. And so then as time goes on, I mean, this is over a long period of time, but Orange County's still really in its infant stage, still agriculture, still cattle, all the way up through even past World War II.
Well, yeah, for sure. And then as those pressures of development started to encroach upon what was the lifestyle, that's when Moulton Ranch started to sell off in pieces. And really the real estate game started coming into play, right? And so Laguna Niguel was really the first piece of Moulton Ranch that was sold off. And that wasn't our doing as much as it was. We had a 1/3 business partner, Jean-Pierre Daguerre. And after he passed away and his wife passed away, their daughters wanted out. The classic real estate story, right? And so we have the appraisals from 1945, and when they were looking to kind of get what they thought was their 1/3 interest in the ranch, because it wasn't defined.
Right.
It wasn't defined by acreage or money. That all
Plus
had
they
to be
only owned part of it, right? So you couldn't even control it.
right. So it had to be determined. And so we've recently come across all the deliberations back and forth between Nellie Gale Moulton herself and the Daguerre heirs, as well as, all the attorneys and people in between. And it's funny to see how land was valued back then at that period of time. The area of Laguna Woods was valued much higher than the beach property or Laguna Niguel.
It's interesting.
And that's what Daguerre's wanted. They wanted that Laguna Woods because it was rolling hills. You could farm it. It was close to the railroad tracks, all that fun stuff.
But that wasn't their piece, right?
That wasn't, no, it wasn't defined yet. And so what they ended up with was the Laguna Niguel piece, because we thought that was less valuable, or at least the family at the time said, we want to hold on to that Laguna Woods piece, this broken, craggy land of Laguna Niguel. What can you do there? They couldn't imagine developing it at that point, right? And we weren't developers anyway. But in any case, I think it tells a tale of how things in real estate values change based on perception or technology or all the different things that build that whole total package. I mean, the beach property at Monarch Bay, that was $50 an acre in 1945. But the inland property by Aliso Viejo was worth more.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah.
Crazy. And so over time, the family continues to hold the land.
Yes.
Really doesn't take the, I guess I'll take the path of the Irvine Company, right? I mean, so once Irvine family sells the land to the Irvine Company, they really start on a path of master development. That really wasn't the plan necessarily for your family.
No, we still wanted to farm and ranch. So there's multiple farms and ranches that were born from the incremental sale of Moulton Ranch. So Laguna Niguel was that first piece. The first real development, though, was Laguna Woods. That was the first piece that really got developed, which was Leisure World.
Right, which is back, where, 70s? Is that right? And
yeah, 60s, 70s. And so Nellie Gale, brokered these deals. Nellie Gale Moulton was active in all of those things, including creating the community in Monarch Bay. That was on leased land starting in 1960 and didn't come out of being leased land until 2020, which brought me to town. I managed that process.
Gotcha. And so as the county as a whole grows up, if you will, as California becomes popular, as the real estate becomes even more valuable than almost all parts of the country, now you got to figure out, okay, what am I going to do and how am I going to manage it? And you're sitting right in the center of the hotbed of everything that's going on.
Right. And that's why they took their time with the transition of the ranch. But all the pressures that if you've watched Yellowstone, property taxes going up,
Right.
Fights about water, all the different pressures really come in on you, and that's a pretty big backyard to try to defend, right?
Right.
I mean, 22,000 acre backyard, it's tough to keep people out. In fact, the beach property was the least favorite of Lewis Moulton and on in the family because it attracted tent cities. People,
Right.
there were cows and sheep and sand don't mix. So how do you manage all that? And then you put it into the context of the '60s. What was happening in Laguna Beach in 1960s?
Right. People were partying and hippies.
Timothy
and,
Leary. I mean, at parties in the canyon, they were smoking a lot of things, and and the worst fear of any rancher is a fire.
Right. Right.
Right. So, you start looking around, and that doesn't help you sleep very well at night.
Yeah.
And even though to be a rancher or a farmer, there's a lot of variables you can't control, those things that keep you up at night are the things that drive you to some decisions. And the decision was they didn't want to be developers. Although I will say, so the ranch sold off incrementally, and like I said, other
So
ranches
the
were
decision
born.
also was made. I really don't. The whole ranch thing, I'm kind of over that too, for the most part, at least at the scale that was going on.
Well, so Moulton Ranch was kind of recreated in a number of different areas. So it was the ranching and the farming continued, and it still continues today. The ranch I grew up on was just short of the size of Moulton Ranch. It was around 20,000 acres up in Northern California, about an hour north of Sacramento. And that kind of was replicated in a number of different places throughout California. Lompoc, Hollister, Merced, Julian, a number of different places around the state. So the family still actively farms and ranches.
Oh, so I didn't know that. So I thought it was really just Orange County.
Oh,
It's
no,
not. It's
no.
much more.
Yeah, once they now in 1970, William Pereira, who was the architect who designed UCI, he designed the Ziggurat, he designed the Space Age building there next to LAX, and the Transamerica building in San Francisco, a number of other buildings as well. He was the architect of the day. He was a family friend. He put together a plan when in 1970 there was about 9,000 acres left unsold, and so he put together what it would look like if we did develop it ourselves.
Huh.
And we found that in our archives, and it's fascinating, especially when you look at the Ziggurat, which is 90 plus acres now, that's now for sale, that he helped design. He wrote the plan in 1970 about what should be around it, and now there's this big opportunity to redevelop that property. So it's interesting to look back and look at those plans.
No question. And so let's fast forward to today.
Sure.
Today you're the CEO of the Moulton Company, and so your role is to manage the family assets and,
Right.
I guess, take it forward for the next generation.
Right.
And so how do you look at that? Is it really a standpoint of from a bigger picture of the land's been in the family for a long, long time, and you're looking at not only your kids but generations to come?
Completely, yeah. That's the goal, is to keep the family together and create new revenue streams, find new opportunities. It's tough to find Orange County, again,
Right.
somewhere else, right? But we try, and we've done pretty well in doing that. Basically, I came into town. My cousin Scott Barnes and I managed the process of the transition out of the Monarch Bay property, which was 214 lots. Everyone had their ability to buy the dirt underneath them in 2020. We managed some early sales and took those proceeds out to market and tried to figure out what the next big thing was. And so we started getting into industrial properties in 2012. And that's the bulk of the portfolio that we've put together over the last 10 years.
So move the money from what was just traditionally in the land or the leased land rent.
It was
and
a
then
trapped
get it into
asset.
But,
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was
the good news is it was trapped asset, but you have cash flow, right? And
Well,
so-
it didn't have any cash flow from 1960 to 2020 at all, hardly. But it was wonderful for preserving generational wealth.
Right.
I mean, the land lease game is a great way to keep your group together if you can do it in one way or another. But getting out of it, we had to take those proceeds and figure out what was next. And so, thankfully, we avoided office product.
Right.
We don't have anything to do with that. and obviously that's the world changed, and that's suffering for that.
And the industrial was a good play, certainly.
Well, we saw that retail was changing, the nature of retail, for sure. We had no idea it was going to get the booster of COVID. I mean, it was a supercharger for industrial properties. We had already invested well in advance of that. But so, a lot of it's luck, as you always know in real estate. But from our perspective, we needed to make sure that we want to continue farming and ranching. And I got news for you. It's not a big moneymaker. Not in California.
Yeah, tough.
It's a lifestyle. So if folks want to continue to do that, we need to find other ways to be able to create more consistent cash flow, and that's what we've been able to do with our real estate place. So, but we're diversified not just into industrial, but also commercial retail, and then also some residential.
So I think the takeaway for kids out there, younger folks, is if you have a choice between getting into real estate and ranching, you're saying go with the real estate. Is that what I'm picking up on?
I think you want to make sure you can get some money coming in other sources. It's really hard to survive in a farming or ranching world in California these days with water and just commodity prices where they are. It's really tough.
Yeah, that might be the weekend thing.
Maybe a toy farm, something like that. I mean, but it's being a kid that grew up on a ranch. Oh my gosh! I mean, it's wonderful.
So let's fast forward to today. You are also the president of the Moulton Museum, which talks about the history of the family, the history of the land, and ultimately, as a byproduct, the history of Orange County.
We thought it was the right thing to do. I mean, never in a million years did I think that we'd be opening up a museum, but we kept finding more things. Our great aunt Louise, who lived till she was 99, she was the daughter of Louis and Nellie Niguel, sister to my grandmother. She moved her entire place about the Aliso Viejo ranch area. That was her purview. She had that area. She had the ziggurat built. She did the deal with North American Rockwell back in the day. So she was around, but she was the last to leave Moulton Ranch. So she had everything with her, and all the cool stuff. And as it got to the end of her days, we started finding all these things. She had basically created a museum of her own in Lompoc. And we said, we got to get this stuff back to Orange County, because she, in her heart, I don't think ever left. She had magazine stacks and on the top of those magazine stacks was Balboa Bay Club magazine or the Orange County Register, that sort of thing. I don't think they ever wanted to really leave, but it was just inevitable. They had to. And so we thought the right move was to bring all that stuff back. We formed a family foundation to keep it under one roof, not split it up amongst different family members, and provide it back to the community. And that's what we've been doing. And we went through an archival process that's been still going on, but for the last 8+ years. And we didn't actually open the museum until about 1.5 years ago.
Now, for those folks who aren't familiar with it, where is the museum?
It's in Laguna Hills, which was the headquarters of Moulton Ranch.
Gotcha.
The headquarters is where the big open pit is now of what used to be Laguna Hills Mall.
Right.
There was an El Torito that used to be open that was basically the site of where Louis and Niguel's home was, and the Daguerres as well. They kind of shared a kind of compound there. But where the museum is off of La Paz and Cabot.
Okay.
And that's property that we've owned since 1895.
And open to the public and cool stuff.
Open to the public, and Tuesdays and Thursdays we have docents there, and by appointment as well, and it's great.
And so your new, I think, thing, right? So now you're certainly involved in the community just as a byproduct of the family interests.
Right.
But certainly involved in a bunch of different community organizations. And then now you decide to run for city council.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. I'm excited about it, though. And, I think it's important to give back to your community. Those are lessons from Niguel and Louis, and it's been part of our family since the beginning, is to always give back, whether you're coaching in Little League or AYSO or sitting on those boards, or that sort of thing is really important. In our position, I think it's incumbent upon us to give back and do what's right for the community. And also, Laguna Hills is a wonderful place to live, and I want to keep it that way.
Yeah. And who better than somebody who's been there from the get-go, right?
I hope so. I hope people see it that way. But in the past is really cool, and it's a great story. But really, the reason I'm running is really more about the future of Laguna Hills and making sure that it's there and standing strong still, well into my kids' lifetimes.
And so let's talk about Laguna Hills for a second, because there are some exciting things that are going on with the city of Laguna Hills. We did a show before and had the previous mayor on the show and talking about the redevelopment of the mall, which is a big deal.
Huge deal.
And really will dictate what happens in that part of Laguna Hills for going forward for many years to come.
I think it's a great opportunity to provide a sense of identity. I think that that's something that is lacking within Laguna Hills itself, and I think that part of that is that mall development. I think creating a sense of place, the tax revenue will be great for the city as well, but really it's got to benefit the citizens and the residents of Laguna Hills, and that's what's, I think, intriguing about the opportunity. Since the time that development started, the world has changed.
Yeah.
I mean, there was 18 acres in there that's outlined for office.
Yeah, well, and then the parking alone, and so now you got a mixed-use product, and then it really is the next wave of housing for the city. And I think that, as a real estate guy, I think it ups the value. The better that whole area does, it ups the value of everything around it.
Completely, right? And we got to figure out a number of different things. Figure out the mall. We got to make sure that our community stays safe, and keep your eye on the ball and stand on the wall for the city and make sure that you're representing the values of the residents in real time. And I look forward to that opportunity.
Yeah, and we've had other mayors and other political figures come in, especially from South County. Homelessness, public safety, parks, streets, all of those things go into making the community a better, safer, more attractive place for
It's
people
the
to
blocking and tackling that may not get all the headlines all the time, but it's the work that needs to be done, and I'm willing to do it. And I think it's I think it's a great opportunity, and I hope everybody else sees it that way too.
Yeah, well, I wish you well, and the election will sneak up on you before you know it.
Oh, you're not kidding. I try to do something every day to make sure that we're heading in the right direction.
And so in terms of South County as a whole, I mean, a lot of those cities, Laguna Hills certainly being one of them, sort of feed off of each other, right? I mean, they are similar in nature, and then the South Orange County economy, I look at it as sort of a collective economy, because people are not so much commuting back to the airport area or Santa Ana like they used to. And,
and this is where the history comes in too. We were talking to some of the original city council members for Laguna Hills, and before all of these cities, which really started getting incorporated in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a master concept of Saddleback City, which would have incorporated Mission Viejo, Laguna Hills, what is now Lake Forest, used to be El Toro, all those things. It would have rivaled the size of Irvine or been bigger. But all these groups, they said, no, we don't want that. We want our own individual.
Right.
We want our own individual cities. Now, I think most residents would be challenged to know whether, when they're driving down Aliso Parkway, whether they're in Laguna Hills or they're in Aliso Viejo or they're in Laguna Niguel. So you're right. They're all tied together, because you can't have a big drop off from one city to the next, because they all tied together. And so there's that symbiotic relationship that is incumbent upon anyone in city politics. But as city council members, you got to get along with the cities next door and be on the same page. And the wonderful thing is, whether it's Laguna Niguel or Aliso Viejo or any of the other surrounding cities, Mission Viejo, everybody there seems to be doing the right thing. And I think there's good relationships.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I mean, from the folks we've had in, I think everybody's got the same general concept. It's a question of managing the growth, but yet still having some growth, and then dictating what happens with the look and the feel of the community going forward.
Right. I think it's always a little uncomfortable when the state mandates how many doorknobs you have in your city. Yeah. So how do you manage that effectively? How do you grow responsibly to where it benefits your residents, and not just your future residents, but the ones that are already there and have been paying those taxes all that time. So that's a challenge. It's a real challenge, and it's one that I think every city is battling.
And I mean, now you have this massive development with the El Toro, with the base, right?
Right.
And so that is one of sort of the next, I mean, generational kind of developments out there with mixed use and master planning and all the above. And I think all of those kinds of things feed back to whether it's Laguna Hills, Laguna Woods, Aliso, Viejo, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure. And the sad part is, at least from my perspective, and again, this is tying back to a historical land, but that Laguna Hills Mall is 60 plus acres, right? And it's raw dirt right now for the most part.
Right.
The Ziggurat, which is in Laguna Niguel, but it's that big 1 million square foot building that's going to come down. It has to. And then there's 90 acres of just a giant parking lot where most folks in Orange County that grew up here anyway, when they were a teenager, probably learned to drive in that parking lot, right? That's going to be 90 acres of raw dirt here pretty soon. So you've got over 150 acres of this raw land, and it's too darn expensive to build anything.
Right.
No developer out there is going to be building multifamily, or is definitely not office. It seems as though the only thing that really pencils right now is single family detached, which doesn't get you to necessarily where you want to go. Can be part of the mix,
Right. But it can't be solely.
But it's so darn expensive out there, and if anybody's out there doing a home remodel or anything like that, you've seen it. From the time that you got your original estimate to what it actually the build becomes, it's been tripling. I mean, I was talking to a good real estate friend of mine the other day, saying the cost of construction is somewhere in the 60% higher than it was pre-COVID.
Oh yeah, in some instances, it's for different aspects of it. It could be 200 or 300% higher.
Right. So that leads you to what's happening on the state level. What are we doing to ourselves? Throwing money at problems. What's the solution? Because right now it's not sustainable.
No, you combine that with the cost of whether it's homeowners or property insurance going up exponentially, and property owners, basically, you have no choice but to just pay the extra amount. So that cuts into your spendable income as well.
I'm also concerned about the generations coming up. I'm surrounded by folks with a lot of kids that have already gone through high school and college, and they're starting young families, and they're not doing it in Orange County. They can't do it.
Right.
They're moving to Tennessee, or they're moving to Texas, or they're moving to Nevada or Idaho, and we got to figure out a way to keep our homegrown talent, right? Because pretty soon it ends up being only those that were lucky enough to get here at the right time, and those that work for them. And you've lost your middle, and which is the heart of our communities. And so where are our teachers going to come from, and our firemen, and everybody that helps our community turn? And so we gotta think about that too.
No question. And those are bigger picture economic
Sure.
conversations that we could go all day with, but we don't have time for. But I guess what I would ask you is, what keeps you up at night? Is it inflation? Is it higher interest rates? Is it threat of war? Is it cost of utilities? Is it state mandated things? Is it all of the above? And where do we go? I mean, I don't want to push out forever, but certainly between now and the end of the year, what are the things that really you think come into play?
All of those things that you just mentioned, I just read something about each and every one of those things on my Twitter feed as I was waiting to come in here. So there's a lot of information out there, and you got to figure out, what are you listening to, and what are your priorities? And it can be an elephant sandwich, right? I mean, this massive thing, like there's hardly ever any good news out there, right? And that's hard. That's hard on the soul. But I think, like the proverbial elephant sandwich, what do? You eat it one bite at a time. One bite at a time. And I think that's part of why I'm running for city council, is to, at least in our little corner of the world, try to make it right. And that's the challenge. But I think, from a business standpoint, certainly interest rates are putting us in a position to where we're not doing things we might want to do. So we're keeping our powder dry.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy. That's not good. But by and large, I think that all those things manifest themselves one way or another in our local communities. And so that's why I want to do it.
Yeah, well, look, and I can't wait for November to be here and gone so we can get on with the business of getting on with things.
Right. Who knows what's going to happen between now and then, but we'll just try to keep it steady.
Yeah, well, listen, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing the history of your family and the ranch and certainly your political thoughts, and I wish you all the best in the upcoming election. If I lived in Laguna Hills, I'd vote for you. And much success, continued success for you and your family.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show. Thank you so much.
So I'm Barry Saywitz, president of the Saywitz Company, and we will be back next week talking more real estate. If it's Tuesday, we're here. We're talking about it. We'll see you back again. Thanks again to everybody at OC Talk Radio for helping us put on the show. Thanks to our viewers and our listeners, and we'll see you back again next week on Let's Talk Real Estate.
Well, there you have it. You've been listening to Let's Talk Real Estate, your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current state of the real commercial real estate market right here in Southern California. On Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studio here at the University of California Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.